vacation house they rented every summer, the one they posted about on Facebook with hashtags like number family first and number blessed life. I paid for it. Every July for 4 years. $3,000 a week. Oceanfront in the Outer Banks. Enough rooms for my parents, my aunt and uncle, my cousins, my sister, and her husband. I transferred the money quietly, told my mom it was my contribution to family time, and watched them post sunset photos without tagging me once. I'm not telling you this to sound like a martyr. I'm telling you this so you understand what it felt like to sit at my cousin's graduation dinner last spring and hear my aunt say, in front of 12 people, that I needed to get my act together financially. My name is not important. What matters is that I was 28 years old, I had been silently keeping parts of my family afloat for 6 years, and the woman who said that to me had no idea. None of them did. Let me back up. I graduated college at 22 with a degree in computer science and the job offer I'd worked 3 internships to earn. The salary felt enormous to me then, $74,000 in my first year, in a mid-sized city where rent was still manageable. I was careful. I cooked at home, drove my college car until it died, kept my subscriptions to a minimum. I had a plan. 6 months of emergency fund. Then retirement contributions. Then a down payment. My family's plan was different. It started small. My mom called me 2 months into my first job. She and my dad had hit a rough patch. A medical bill for my dad's back surgery had gone to collections. Could I help just this once? $400. I said yes without hesitating. I loved my parents. Of course I said yes. Then it was my sister. Her husband had been laid off. They were behind on their car payment, just a bridge loan until he found something new. I sent $800. He found a new job 3 months later. They never mentioned paying me back. Then it was the vacation. My mom said the family hadn't had a real trip together in years, and wouldn't it be nice? And she knew I was doing well, and she didn't want to pressure me, but I paid for the house. I told myself it was a gift. I took 2 days off work and flew in on a Thursday. My aunt spent most of Friday telling my cousin about a financial advisor she'd found who was really changing their whole approach to wealth building. I smiled and passed the potato salad. The requests kept coming, not always from my parents. Sometimes from my sister. Sometimes my aunt and uncle when their truck needed a new transmission and they were in a pinch. I always helped when I could. I told myself this was what family did. I told myself I was lucky to be able to. What I didn't tell myself, because I wasn't ready to hear it, was that not one of them had ever asked how I was doing with money. Not once. They assumed I was fine because I never complained. They assumed helping was easy because I made it look easy. And somewhere along the way, she's doing well, curdled into. She has no real expenses, no real responsibilities, no real life. I found this out slowly, the way you find out most painful things, in pieces. My sister mentioned once that she and her husband were planning to buy a house soon and needed to be responsible about their finances, unlike some people who just drift. I let it pass. I thought she meant it generally. My dad made a comment at Thanksgiving about how I was still renting, and he hoped I had some kind of plan. He said it the way you'd say it to a 22-year-old, not a 28-year-old who had been quietly paying his medical bills for 6 years. My mom told her book club friend, who told her daughter, who told my cousin, that she worried about me. That I seemed to have a lot of freedom, but not much direction. That she wasn't sure I was building anything. I found out about that last one about a week before the graduation dinner. The dinner was at a steakhouse. Big round table, white tablecloths, the whole family together for my cousin's graduation from nursing school. I was genuinely proud of her. She'd worked hard, taken night classes for 3 years while working full-time. I had sent her a card and a check for $200. I remember feeling good about that. We were on our second round of drinks when my aunt started talking about money. She did this sometimes. She had opinions about financial responsibility, about young people today, about the importance of property ownership and investment. I usually tuned it out. But then she turned to me. "You know," she said, in that voice that's almost kind, almost concerned, Just enough that you can't call it out without sounding sensitive. I worry about you sometimes. You're almost 30. You're still renting. You don't seem to be building equity anywhere. It's okay to admit when you need guidance. The table got quiet, not fully quiet. People were still cutting their steak. My uncle was refilling his glass. But there was that particular kind of attention that gathers around an awkward moment. I'm okay, I said. Are you, though? My aunt said. She tilted her head. Your mom mentioned you've been a little scattered. Financially. I looked at my mom. She looked down at her plate. I have a 401k, I said. I have savings. That's good, honey, my aunt said in the tone you'd use with a child who had correctly identified a color. But at your age, you should really be thinking about building actual wealth. A home. Investments. You can't just live month to month and hope things work out. Month to month. I had sent this woman's family money for a truck transmission 8 months ago. I had sat in a vacation house I paid for while she talked about wealth building. I had sent her daughter, the nursing school graduate sitting 3 seats away, smiling uncertainly, $200 that very week. I picked up my water glass and I took a slow sip, and I made myself breathe. I did not say anything at dinner. This is the part that, later, the people in my life would have opinions about. My friend thought I should have said something right then. Made them look at me right there in the steakhouse. There is a version of me that wanted to do that wanted to stand up with my wine glass and say, actually, let me walk you through the spreadsheet. But I didn't, and not because I was afraid. I didn't because I was tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from one bad night. The kind that settles into your bones after years of being quiet so everyone else can be comfortable. I was tired in a way I hadn't fully admitted to myself until that exact moment, when I sat at that table and felt something inside me go very, very still. I drove home alone. I lived 40 minutes from the restaurant, out past the suburbs where the road gets dark and the gas stations are spread apart. I had the windows down. It was May, just warm enough, and the air smelled like cut grass and something blooming I couldn't name. I wasn't crying. I was thinking. When I got home, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and a glass of water, and I opened a new document. I started with my parents. I went back through 6 years of bank statements. I had kept them all, organized by year in a folder on my hard drive, because I am the kind of person who keeps records. I found every transfer, every Zelle payment, every Venmo, every check I'd photographed before mailing. I listed them in a table: date, recipient, amount, reason. My dad's medical bills, $4,200 across 3 separate incidents. My mom's car repair when she hit a deer on the interstate, $1,800. The month they couldn't make their mortgage because my dad's hours had been cut, $2,400, which I had called a loan, and we had never spoken of again. I moved to my sister. The car payment bridge loan that was never repaid, $800. Her security deposit when she and her husband moved apartments before they got their act together, $1,500. The time she called crying because they'd overdrafted and had no groceries and payday was 4 days away, $300. I moved to my aunt and uncle. The truck transmission, 11 mines with tithes. The vacation house, $3,100 one year, $3,300 the next, $3,300 the year after, $3,300 the last year, $12,000. I had to sit with that number for a moment. $12,000 for a house on the beach so my aunt could talk about wealth building while I was subsidizing her vacation. When I finished the document, I looked at the total for a long time. $27,043, 6 bars. I had sent my family $27,843 over 6 years, and the consensus at the table tonight was that I needed guidance. I made a cup of tea. I washed my face. I went to bed. I didn't sleep well. I kept running through the dinner in my head, my aunt's tilted head, my mom looking at her plate, my cousin's uncertain smile. At some point around 3 in the morning, I picked up my phone and opened the document again and read through the whole thing. Every line, every number. Then I opened my email. I wrote to my parents first. I wrote a separate email to my sister. I wrote a final, shorter email to my aunt and uncle, CC'd, to my parents and my sister so everyone would have the same information. I was careful with the wording. I was not cruel. I did not call anyone names. I explained, clearly and simply, that I had spent 6 years providing financial support to multiple members of our family. That I had done this quietly and without complaint because I loved them, and that I was attaching a document that summarized what that support had looked like. I wrote, I don't share this to embarrass anyone or to demand repayment. I'm sharing it because I sat at dinner tonight and was told I needed to get my financial act together by someone whose truck repairs I paid for last fall. I don't think any of you knew the full picture, now you do. I wrote, going forward, I won't be able to continue providing financial support to the family. This isn't a punishment. It's a boundary I should have set years ago. And I'm sorry it took me this long to set it. I wrote, I love all of you. I hope we can talk about this when everyone has had time to process it. But I needed to say it. And I needed you to see the numbers. I attached the spreadsheet. I read it 3 times. I changed 2 words. I read it again. Then I set it to send at 7 the next morning, closed my laptop, and went to sleep. I slept better than I had in months. I was in the shower when my phone started going off. I heard it buzzing against the bathroom counter, once then again. Then a rapid series of notifications that meant someone was calling, not texting. I finished rinsing my hair. I dried off slowly. I picked up my phone and looked at the screen. 4 missed calls from my mom, 2 from my sister, 1 from my aunt. I made coffee first. My mom called again while I was waiting for the pot to finish. I watched the screen light up and go dark. Then my sister called. Then my aunt again. Then my dad's number, which he almost never used to call me from, he usually texted. And that one I almost picked up. Almost. I poured my coffee. I sat at the same kitchen table where I had built the spreadsheet the night before. The morning light was coming through the window over the sink. A bird was doing something complicated in the tree outside. I thought about what I wanted my life to look like, not in the abstract, vision board way I'd been thinking about it for years, but specifically, concretely. What did I actually want? I wanted to keep more of what I earned. I wanted to stop running mental calculations every time a family member called. The quick internal math of, can I cover this? Do I have enough cushion? Will this set back my timeline? I wanted to stop being the person everyone assumed was fine, always fine. My phone buzzed again. A text from my sister this time. We need to talk. I had no idea you felt this way. I read it twice. I noticed she said she didn't know I felt this way. Not that she didn't know the facts I'd laid out. Already reframing it as my emotions rather than the numbers. I put the phone face down on the table. I thought about what my aunt had said. You can't just live month to month and hope things work out. And I thought about how she had said it with such confidence, such certainty, that she understood my situation, when she had not known even the basic facts of it. She had constructed an entire picture of who I was financially, irresponsible, drifting, in need of guidance. And not once had it occurred to her to ask. Not once had any of them asked. That was the thing I kept coming back to. I was not angry at them for needing help. People need help, that's human. I was not angry at them for taking it when I offered. I wasn't even angry at them, exactly, for the dinner. My aunt had been operating on bad information, they all had. What I was angry about, what I finally let myself be angry about, sitting there in my quiet kitchen on a Tuesday morning, was that none of them had thought to ask. Not once in 6 years. Not a, how are you doing with things? Not a, is this too much? Not even a thank you. Most of the time, they had taken the picture of me they preferred, responsible, fine, vaguely adrift but not in a way that required their attention. And they had stopped looking any closer. I had let them, I know that. I had made it easy to not look closer. That morning was the first time I thought clearly about why. It felt good to be the capable one. It felt good to be the one who could handle it, who had it together enough to help. In a family where there was always some crisis, some emergency, something falling apart. Being the person who stayed solid was a kind of identity. I'd built myself around it, and somewhere in the building, I'd forgotten to ask whether it was good for me. The phone buzzed again. My dad this time, a text. "Sweetheart, please call me. Let's talk. Your mother is very upset." I read it. I set the phone back down. I thought about all the times I had answered, all the times I'd picked up the phone and said, "Of course, don't worry, I'll take care of it." I thought about how good I'd been at making it look effortless, how much work it had taken to make it look effortless, how much work it had taken to make it look effortless. I thought about the vacation house, the sunset photos, the hashtags. I picked up my coffee cup and I went and stood at the window for a while. My city looked ordinary and good in the morning light. Familiar rooftops, someone's sprinkler going in the yard across the street, a delivery truck making its slow way down the block. Ordinary and good, and mine. I had worked for this life, every piece of it, the apartment, the furniture I'd bought slowly and carefully because I liked it, the kitchen where I cooked actual meals because that was something I had decided to value. I had built something real, and I had been doing it at the same time as I was helping them build theirs, and not one of them had known. Now they knew. My phone buzzed a fifth time, a sixth. I didn't look. I went and got dressed. I had a meeting at 10 and work to do before it. I was not going to be the person who spent a Tuesday falling apart over this. I had said what I needed to say. I had laid out the numbers. Whatever came next would come. I was pulling on my jacket when my phone rang again, my aunt's number. I looked at it. I thought about what she would say. I thought about, "Let's keep this between us, and you have to understand the context," and I didn't mean it the way it sounded. I thought about the tilted head and the almost kind voice. I put the phone in my bag and I walked out the door. The street outside was bright and a little windy, the kind of May morning that doesn't quite know what it wants to be. I walked to my car. I put my bag in the passenger seat. I sat for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel. My mom called again. I watched the screen. I thought about picking up. I thought about what I would say. I thought about how much I loved her, in spite of everything, in the complicated way you love someone who has disappointed you without ever meaning to. I thought about how I was probably going to call her back, eventually, how we were probably going to have a long, difficult conversation, and another after that, and maybe it would be okay in the end, or maybe it wouldn't. But we would get through it one way or another. Because that's what family does, the real version of it, not the Facebook version. But not today. Today I had work. Today I had a life that was mine, and a morning that was already running late, and a Tuesday that was going to happen whether I spent it on the phone defending a spreadsheet or not. I let the call go to voicemail. I started the car. And as I pulled out of the driveway and onto the street that was bright and ordinary and mine, I thought, not without some sadness, not without some grief for the easier version of all this, now we can start being honest with each other. It felt like something, not quite relief, not quite freedom, but close, close enough to drive toward. I've thought a lot about why it took me 6 years. Not 6 weeks, not 6 months. 6 years of transfers and spreadsheets and silent dinners. 6 years of being the person who held things together while everyone assumed I was the one who had nothing figured out. And the honest answer, the one I had to sit with for a long time before I could say it out loud, is that I let it happen. Not because I was weak, because I had confused endurance with integrity. There's a difference between being a good person and being a person who can't stop absorbing other people's consequences. I told myself I was helping because I loved my family, and that was true, but I was also helping because I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't. Afraid they'd struggle. Afraid they'd resent me. Afraid that saying no would mean I wasn't the person I believed myself to be. That fear had nothing to do with love. It had to do with who I needed to see in the mirror. That's the thing no one tells you about generosity without limits. It stops being generosity and starts being a story you tell yourself about your own character. And that story can cost you everything. Your savings, your energy, your sense of what you're actually owed, before you ever notice the price. What I know now is that genuine care for people you love, has to be built on honesty, or it isn't care at all. It's performance. My family wasn't wrong to need help sometimes. That's human. But I had spent 6 years helping them in the dark, which meant I had also spent 6 years letting them build a picture of me that wasn't real. Some of that was on them. A lot of it was on me. I had chosen the comfort of being needed over the discomfort of being known. The spreadsheet changed that. Not because it was a perfect solution. It wasn't, and the weeks that followed were hard in ways I hadn't fully anticipated. But it was the first completely honest thing I had done with my family in years. No softening, no managing their feelings, no quietly absorbing the gap between who they thought I was and who I actually was. Just the numbers, laid out plainly, because the truth deserved to be laid out plainly. That took something I hadn't known I was building. You don't get to that kind of clarity without years of watching yourself carefully, noticing when your choices are driven by values and when they're driven by avoidance. You don't get there without the discipline to keep your own records, to sit at a kitchen table at midnight and do the hard math, and to trust what the math tells you even when the answer is uncomfortable. My aunt told me I needed to get my financial act together. What she meant was that she had misjudged me completely. What I heard that night was the sound of a story that had run its course. I'm not angry at her anymore. I'm not even angry at my mom for looking at her plate. People see what they're shown. And I had been very careful about what I showed. The version of me they knew was incomplete, not because they were cruel, but because I had edited myself down to something easier to carry. The full version is harder. She has records. She has a number. She set it to send at 7 in the morning and then slept better than she had in months. That version I think I'll keep.